just thought I'd just say a few things. Most of you who know me, I never say a few things, but I start out that way. Continue eating. I just want to thank each and every one of you. I wish, I could do it more personally, but you all have stood by me through the test of time, and I know that those injuries that I had were part of what you experienced, and you were really experiencing it with me. And I wanted to put something together today just to say thank you and put some food here so that would make you want to come. And I also wanted to share maybe some things that might help you live a life of learning to train to your highest potential. Sorry, Monica teaches the reaching your highest potential, but I have some things I want to share today that I very rarely share, because when I started in athleticism, it wasn't acceptable for women to take part in things that I did, and I kept most of it in a secret place in my mind, and I knew one time I would have an occasion to share. And these are lessons that I learned that I think may be of very, very powerful interest to each of you. I started out knowing that I was pushing the envelope in most things that I did. I started at 16 at FSU running a track with my boyfriend. He was a football player, and I would run around the track, and I hated it, but I made up my mind to do a mile a day. Make no mistake, I never had that running high. I never had any of that stuff, but I was determined to get out of that dorm, and later I got kicked out of Landis because I didn't believe in curfews. So I was determined to get out of the apartment. I wasn't bad, John. And anyway, I knew that I looked forward to it because it relaxed me. It absolutely, and I had no idea what stress, I didn't know I had stress. Students having stress, what? But I knew that it really helped that, and I started to look forward to what I felt afterwards. So, in a way, I suppose there's a positive addiction, but talking about people having this notion of when to do it, where to do it, well, we didn't have any choices. Babs, years ago, I had to run the track because women didn't run in the streets. This was over 46 years ago. And running on the track was safe, so I ran, and I started to do that daily until age 18. And then I looked up for some more challenges. I hooked up with Mike Shaver, Gus Mejia. You might know them, John. They ran every Gasparilla. And they brought me into another stage called long distance. And Michelle, I know, knows about some of these occasions. Long distance then was 2 to 4 miles. And I started to enjoy it. And then we started reading about these marathons. What the heck? Why not? So I wanted to get in real good condition. They were always fast, but they were very supportive of me. Mind you, Sandra would come up later, but I had no other women friends. And the camaraderie was extremely, it made a big difference. It was very important to me. They encouraged me to get in good shape. I took karate for a number of years to become extremely strong and able to keep up with them. And we started to have these marathons, one in Mulberry. We ran all the way to Mulberry. We ran Schlitz, Sandra remembers the Schlitz National one. We had Bill Rogers, Frank Shorter. And I think we only had 3 or 4 women. So I learned very, very early to have fun. And we never ran for time, Krista. I never had any pressure. It was just like we ran, picked fruit. When we got hungry, we went for donuts. We just kept running. It was a pleasure. And no problem winning because there was hardly any other women. So, life was really good. And then I had, at 18 years old, I saw this MacDill Air Force parachuting club. Wouldn't that be neat to see about that? Well, there again, it was all men, and I talked to my roommate, Peggy, come on out and let's see what this is about. And it was very rigorous. They really didn't want the women, but I was signed up, and I would have 5 opportunities to do a parachute jump with the correct form. So that meant going in a Cessna, getting on the plane, and having that little static line. And I know Miss Betty did a parachute jump, but she had a human being with her. We didn't have any. We just jumped out the plane. But I had to have perfect form, you know, like this, so I wouldn't get rolling and all this stuff. Well, I failed every one of them, and they wanted me out of there. And I said, no. I said, I want another try. I said, you all think I'm going to fail, and you all, you know, I didn't say this, I thought it. My perception was they weren't in favor of me. My perception was, Lynn, they don't really want you there. Well, then that made me even more determined. And worship Peggy froze on the Cessna. She was so frightened, she got out there and they had to land with her on there. So it was like, this is not working for women. So I went ahead and I said, give me another chance. And I mean, I can do this. And I went through 2 weeks of the PLFs where you jump from almost 2 stories and practice landing falls. And I did all this vigorous work and ran and all that. So I was really up for it, and I was determined, and by golly, I was going to do it. So I went ahead into the shop and go, and I got a 6-pack of beer. And I went and drank a few. And I said, it's all in your mind, so why don't you change your mind? Change the way you're thinking. So I thought a couple of beers would work, and it relaxed me. And I can't say anything about it now because my son's here, but this is the truth. So I went ahead and got in that plane, talk about a high. I went ahead and got that perfect position, and I was good to go. And I'm serious. And what it was is I let my mind go on to failure because that's what they wanted. Right. And then Warren Kaufman, who was a very well-known, I don't know whether he's a colonel, what the heck he was, but he was retired. And he was Air Force, and he says, if I don't train you, you're going to go kill yourself. Because every time you jump out, I mean, I land in barbed wire, I did the trees. I was the worst student. I was nervous. And he said, I'm going to personally train you. And so I was trained by one of the best. And I would later on become part of the Golden Knights. That's an Army team of parachutists. I trained in Fort Bragg, just like an Army person would. We started out with rounds, and in Littleton, Sandra, you asked me about that. I performed accuracy. I had to land on something like about this size. I was given that kind of training, and I was able to do it. Now, there wasn't hardly any women, so what did I know? How well did I do? I don't know. I guess I did pretty well because you tell me where to land, and I landed. And what we did is something very individual that people don't get a chance to do nowadays. We learned acrobatics in the air, and we were timed. We were timed for our right turn, left turn, back loop, right turn, left turn. And if you made certain times, you could go to the state championships. And in the training that I had with the Golden Knights and military training, there were no options about how many jumps you were going to do per day. We just trained and trained until we got to be the best that we could. And when I left there, I was able to do, the mean average was about 8 seconds. My girlfriend Cheryl, who's a world champion, international known, was able to do it 6. And then we had Kathy Collingwood, a few of these girls who absolutely competed. But I went all over the United States to compete in acrobatics. And then in those little, you know, trying to land on these little dimes. I don't know, I graduated from college too, by the way. I wasn't a complete hippie, but I was a very big competitor. And I didn't even care if I won because I had a boyfriend of 9 years and it was all about him because he was very competitive. So I was just like a sideshow. And, but I learned how to compete. And it still stays with me today, Monica, and those of you who do. I never look at anyone else. I only compete with myself. All I knew how to do was the best upon my training, and I always followed orders. To this day, I follow orders. If I'm told to land or to do something, I try to my best to do it. And there was no like, oh, I don't feel well, or this is not a good day for me. There was nothing like that. So for 9 years, I went all over the United States and did that. And John Long at Zephyr Hills told me, you know, Lynn, just time you settle down. I'm getting tired of seeing you out here and just jumping and not really working, and, you know, where are you going in your life? And one of those kinds of talks, which is really hard. So I said, you know, I'm not ready to stop and all this. And he said, well, let me tell you this. He said, I have a few schools. I didn't know he was going to be a superintendent of schools. He was a paramedic. He said, I have a few schools. I'm going to put you in one if you'll take the job. So he gave me, put me in a brand new school, gave me a teaching job. And I began teaching. I was certified to teach. So I settled down about a year after. And so at age 26, 27, I stopped. I sold my parachute equipment. And by that time, I was into running. And I seriously knew that running was probably where I was going to wind up, because I loved it. I loved the movement and I loved the speed. And I finally got a coach who taught me how to go fast. So John, who wins every race, and he knows a little bit about it, Michelle, I brought that training from parachuting into my running. And there again, I was very specific. If I wanted to do a 10-mile race, then I was training for a 10-mile race. If I wanted to win, I looked at who was winning, and I was going to get to that point so I could do it. And I was never fast. I just knew how to train, and I knew how to think. I knew how to visualize. We had to visualize in parachuting all the time. It was just too quick of a sport to figure things out. You had to know. You had to always react. So I visualized most of my life about how I was going to run a race. I never looked left or right. I know how to train because I had to train myself, and then I hired coaches. I had the worst coach, I had the best coach. I had a coach that's well known in St. Petersburg, who I was overtrained. Women especially have a tendency to go and go. Men, we know that. You guys, I won't mention Don's name, but some of us don't know how to do it halfway, and I was one of those. And I was overtrained. And I wanted to go to Boston, Marianne, and I thought by this time, after, you know, 30-something marathons, I mean, something, you know, I should be able to do that. And I had those 5Ks. I don't know whether you remember me far back, John, when I was doing that, but everything was commensurate with qualifying, but I never would. So I didn't know I was overtrained until I was told by Charlie, another guy who I told both his kids, Lynn, you got to go on a whole new system. So he coached me and told me to take 2 days off, and I mean, it was like hardly running. And then as soon as I did the next marathon, I qualified, and then I would do that for 12 more years. So I qualified for Boston almost, I guess it was 12 years. It was just a little formula, and it changes as you age. But anyway, those were the good times. And now I got to tell you some of the bad times, because I had some bad times, and that's why you're here. And I'm all about, as my son said, make sure it's about you. I'm all about that. I do know that determination and keeping your eye on the ball and having strong mental power, and you'll know what this means soon when I tell you what I went through, has a lot to do with why I'm standing here today. I shouldn't be standing here today. It was very, very hard that I went through. The period of time from 2011, I had, you know, little minor things. A meniscus, I fell in a hole in Carrollwood, then a little bone spur, so that was 2 minor surgeries. Then I was attacked by 2 dogs. You know, anyone can get attacked by dogs, but these were pretty big. And Zori, who's not here, she had to beat the dog off, but it impacted my torso, and it took my leg and it twisted it and tore the ACL out and the meniscus and pretty much ruined what I had in my knee. And Dr. Waslick, who has been my orthopedic surgeon now for 30 years, he's just about ready to retire, he said, I'm going to try to put it together again. So he reconstructed what really, I don't guess it could be done, but he reconstructed my knee, just like Sandra's daughter had a huge melanoma. Reconstruction. It was experimental. So I held together, it was held really together by spandex. And that's how I ran for about 3/4 of a year. And I wasn't in pain, so that's something I don't believe in. I don't run in pain. But it got to be a point where I had to take an naproxen. This is when I started to think about my knee being more serious, because it was failing me. It was like I would just walk and it would just go. And I started falling over and over on this shoulder. And then I get up and keep going. Well, and Christy and some of you guys that are in Core and More know that I was doing the planks and everything. Well, I was in a lot of pain because it was just not normal. And I always thought the exercise would get back in there. It was a shoulder cuff. So 2011, I pretty much started a painful journey into knowing that I was going to have a total knee replacement. Wozlik said there's nothing more I can do. And I said, you know, I guess I won't run anymore. And he said, that's not true. He said that I've seen people ski, I see them, you know, playing golf and all this, so he was very encouraging. And I knew myself, I didn't even know I'd be able to walk after total knee surgery. I didn't know anybody who had it. And I knew that I had no options because I had no more shoulder and I could hardly walk without, I had no pain, I just had no stability. And this was my pain, not the knee. So we had Dr. Lyons. He was the one. I should have had Wozlik, Amy, but somehow the communication got crisscrossed. Lou came in, visited, heard that one of the tennis players had Lyons. He was the best. So December 18th, 2012, I was going to have surgery. Well, right before that, in November, and Marianne knows this, I had this problem breathing continually. I was running hard, but I couldn't breathe. And then I had Dr. Boothby, who was my son, Thomas, you remember, Renee Boothby. He told me I had a huge nodule that was actually choking me in my esophagus. I had possibly cancer. And that was I think that was in November. I already knew I was going to have total knee. And then I had that scare, and it's always a scare. And he said, probably not. So we had the biopsies, and it was non-cancerous, and we took it out. And he didn't have to take the whole thyroid, just took half. So who knows what that means? Well, so he's happy as a log, and I'm facing the total knee. So then I went ahead and went to the hospital for pre-op, Carol, and this was all during we did Core and More. And they told me my insurance didn't cover it. And Lou was playing tennis. Where's my husband? Oh, right there. Right there. He was playing right here. So I said, you know, this is pre-op, the day before surgery. I said, no, of course you have to, you know, I have to have surgery. I have to walk again. I can't. No, sorry. I said, well, I'm going to pay for it. I said, you go and tell me how much it costs, and I'll get money. I'll pay for it. And I did. I paid for it. I paid $29,000 for the implant. I paid $96,000 for the hospital stay. I paid, what else? Oh, the surgeon. They couldn't figure out how much he was going to charge, so they gave me a guesstimate. They wanted that money right then. Oh, God. I called up Lou. He said, you know, I got to have the surgery. And I wrote some checks out, and I had to up my credit limit. And he has, you know, some resources. And then I go home, it's time for my nap, and you all know I never miss my nap. I had a hell of a day, and I was going to have surgery. That was all there was to it. I had paid for it. Then Lou comes back after interrogating the whole Humana system, which today they probably closed that whole office down. He almost killed them all. And he says, well, Lynn, everything's fine. They just coded you wrong. They put you under osteoporosis versus osteoarthritis, and I'm not covered for osteoporosis, so you all be careful with that. All of a sudden, I have a paid vacation for 4 days. So I was as scheduled, and so I mean, I want to get just to the quicker parts of knee surgery. I didn't tell anybody but a few people because I didn't know what was going. I didn't know if I'd be walking. I did not know what to expect. I was a good patient. Every medicine, though, I couldn't take, so I threw up day after day after day after day. So I couldn't really hold anything for pain medication, so I was really in tremendous pain. And then they found the formula, some kind of formula to sedate me and keep the pain off, and then I was able to get released. Well, I got up, and I did get up, and they were surprised. They wondered, how did I get up? But I got up, and I walked, and it was the hip. Remember we did this? My hips were so strong, so I was able to walk, and then I wanted to go home. It's time for me to go home. They let me go home, and of course they had the nurse, and they had the PT, and the nurse was so upset because I didn't want the walker. After 2 days home, no. And then Miss Betty, you should know, is a nurse, and she comes up with her other walker. She didn't like the walker I had. Miss Betty wants me to try the right walker, so she comes with a really nice, deluxe model. And I found the walker to be very cumbersome, getting around the halls. I threw that darn thing in the closet somewhere. And then the nurse, she just got fed up. She just said, you're walking and you're not supposed to, and I only want you to walk 2 blocks. Well, I started walking at week 2. I think I was up to a mile. And I remember that it wasn't painful, but I was walking like, real careful. But I was walking, and that meant a lot to me, because you have to know, if you've run all your life and you become crippled, and your whole life revolved around athleticism, and then you can't move, you have to know what my mind was at. I had to have the notion that it's going to be okay, or that somehow I'm going to pull out of this. And Mary Ann Malone, some of you know, and Ed took my first walk with me, and they didn't realize how slow the walk was. And they wanted to support me, as good friends do, so I was walking like this in Flatwoods, and they were so cold, it happened to be really cold. I think it was in January. And anyway, so I started to walk, and I did, with Charlene, I think, 4 weeks, we did a 5K, and I was doing that cardio walk that I teach everybody, and then Charlene got ahead of me, so she'll tell you, I had to kick her butt, and I know it was wrong, but that was that determination, that competitiveness. But I wanted just to go through some of the experiences, because I've had some calls all around from the United States about this total knee. I knew that I had to get off of painkillers. One of the things they give you is the stuff that they sell on the streets. And I'm telling you right now, I learned from parachuting and from all the pain. I guess I had pain, but it was good kind of pain. And some of you athletes know what I'm talking about. It wasn't bad, but you have to keep track of your pain. Because if you don't control your pain and you let a pill do it, how do you know what's painful and what's not? So I don't believe in this stuff, but they wanted me to have it, because the physical therapist said you have to have a 90-degree before I leave, and she made these rules. And the only way you can do it is you have to take this so you don't feel it. Well, 2 weeks, and I said no more. So I went ahead and got off of that, and that's when I could really tell you how I was getting well, because I could start thinking again. Pain is a very natural rehabilitator. It's one of the best things that helps you protect yourself, and it makes you clarify how to proceed for type A personalities like myself especially. So I got to week 4 with Charlene, and I was not in pain, ran, iced like heck, that's your anti-inflammatory, and I decided, my son, that if I could walk 9.3 miles, I could probably run. So I started walking long distances. Miss Betty would be reminded that I trained for Boston in those hiking boots, and I had the heavy boots on. And so I walked, and then I said, Thomas, let's go ahead and do the Gasparilla. I think you remember this. And we did, and I trained for 11-minute pace, and that's what we did. Right, Thomas? And he was all about not letting anyone get near me, because I only could go in a straight line. I couldn't, it was like, no one get near me. So he'd run up, get the water, and I, my own little speed, didn't waver, and finally finished. And most of the girls didn't even know I had total knee, because I guess a lot of you find out who your friends are too, by the way, when you start advertising what you had. And a lot of people can't handle the amount of stuff, because then I had to have another knee surgery. I decided that after Iron Girl, which I did place first in my age group. That was in March, and I was determined to go in the top 5. But as I was going, I noticed my right leg was not the same as my left. Well, this weighs an extra 2 pounds, and I knew that. So as I was going, I decided that I have to get this leg right. So I asked Wozlick if he could clean it out and make it even, which of course he did. But he said, Lynn, maybe we better do the shoulder first, because you've got about a 5-centimeter tear. And I said, no, I want my legs back first. And he can't do them both. So I had to go from the legs, and then 3 weeks later I had to do the shoulder. So I had, at that time, that was 4 surgeries. And each one had necessitated rehabilitation. And that's why a lot of you, maybe I was moody. I want to thank my husband so much, because I just was exhausted from all this rehab and appointments and da-da-da-da-da, and trying to get my life back to a routine. And that's exactly what I want to share with you. I know now that there are many things that I can tell you and I can share with you that will help you very much in terms of if you ever have a malady. I think the first thing that I was very lucky is to have the best of all surgeons. And I say that because Miss Betty have seen a non-example. We had a vein thing, and it was horrible. But Boothby I knew from Thomas's age, Dr. Boothby. Wozlick I knew for 30 years. There was never a question whether I was going to be okay. I just knew I was, so I never questioned at all. And Wozlick actually just gave me a donation for teaching my homeschool kids, because anyway, that's just but he was a good friend as well. I also think that a lot of girls and guys, when they have something wrong with them, it's time to stop and you know, stop moving. And I say this to them: find out what you have left, whatever it is, and make it strong. It doesn't mean you can't stop moving. I mean, I had it all going on. So what happened when I had the knee, Mary? I just used the rest of my body. And when I had the arm, I just used the rest. And that's how I went through for months and months and months. And I knew that from long ago. You use what you got. And never take for granted how long you're going to have it. Always be moving. Always be moving. And always believe that you can and you will get better. Because most people do get better. I also think of mind. The mind, as I learned, and that's why I mentioned all this parachuting stuff, otherwise I would not have. I learned early on to control my thoughts. I never let people tell me it's not going to work, it's not going to happen, it's not going to be good, you're doing a heck of a bad job, whatever. I could give a crap. I was a very mentally strong person because I had to be when I started that military training, and I learned that way, and it never failed me, just to keep focused and set your goals and do it. And the strong mind does not come with medicine. You have to have a clear mind as best as you can. The medicine stuff, it's all advertised now. It does us in. And I know, Gloria, you know about this. I have a lot of nurses around that know what happens to many patients. You've got to keep it strong. A fitness routine. That's the first thing I knew to do, and I know you've just suffered, you have to have an upcoming surgery. I say this to you: you find a time once a day and you make it your routine to be healthy. I don't care if you take a walk, because when you start doing something for yourself, it gives you mental strength and a higher power than many people. Because many people look at us, Sandy, out the doors, and I wish I could be doing this. I wish I started doing yoga. I wish I started doing long distance running. See, they wish, they never start. And I ask them this: well, what are you going to do 5 years from now? What's your life going to be 5 years from now? So why don't you get started now? Why are we waiting? Let's do something. I also say, each experience, every time you have a bad point in your life, because you know we all do, you flip it over and you make it a good point. So I say, yeah, my shoulder is not doing well. And I went on the paddle board yesterday. I can't really kneel. I can't even paddle. So, but I was going to try. So I said, well, what do I have that's going to get me on this darn thing? And I have balance. And that's what I did. So, you know, I thought about, you know, you all, what do you have that you got left, and just focus on it. Don't focus on what you don't have, focus on what you can do. So I just used balance, and up I got, and there it was. I mean, and I couldn't afford to fall. I'm sorry, some of you who fell, because I couldn't get on again, so I couldn't afford to fall off the paddleboard. So, but anyway, and this is just about lastly, the thing about that you all, and you're the choir, but I know that I never stopped moving. I don't say it was right all the time, but I always moved. My mind followed, and then the body follows. Just think that way. And Emery's a good example. He had concussion, and he's qualified for Boston 4 times. We've run together for many years. His famous phrase is, I'm not a quitter, I'm not a quitter. And he's not a quitter. So despite having a concussion and every one of his family members going into, you know, conniption fits, and every one of you should also, because he shouldn't be driving, but he's out in that trail. My husband sees him every day walking. He does, because he knows when he stops moving, that's the end of him. And I know that. I know that. I've known him for too long. And John and some of us know that. Emery started running at 63 and ran 4 Boston marathons. His marathon time was a 3:42 at age 74. He never doubted. He talked about it. He never thought he wasn't going to qualify. Neither did I. I didn't know. I mean, I ran with him. All I talked about was women. And he talked the whole time. So, I mean, he was a perfect companion, and he never stops. I had to make him stop to go to the restroom, because that's all he complained about for a few miles. But anyway, he is a very good example of keeping always moving. And folks, lastly, when you think you had done it all, of course we know better, if you feel that way, you pause and you start thinking how you can help others, because helping others is really what it's all about. I took my body for many years and ran marathons all over the country to help others finish. I probably overused it. I have 94 marathons. I did it because I wanted to help others. After a while, folks, and I probably would say, if anything, go to cross training. You know, try not to use your legs as much. But do help others, because that's how you're going to stay in the game. And I know every one of you are that way. And that's all I ever care about anymore. If I can be of assistance in any way, that's how I will live my life. And if I can teach in any way, I will continue to do so. I taught 26 years, and I'm still teaching today at the homeschool. I thank you all for being here, and I thank you for listening. I hope some of those principles of training, routine and tenacity and perseverance and mental power, whatever, I hope some of that rubs off. And thank you. Have a good day.